Kerala, the Chera style and its palaces. Same heavy-set bodies of gods mostly. Impressive. Representational icons really, not narrative at all. But when we get to Rajasthan and its forts, palaces, and mansions or villas called havelis, there's a lot of Mughal influence. Colors become much more pastels, great attention to line and detail and perspective, much more naturalism too, we'll see, and very highly secular. Courtly, portraits, romantic, very much so. A return to more rounded lines as we had seen at Ajanta. So we come finally to the Rajasthani mural styles. We start in Bundi and go to Kotah further in the south, up in the middle to Naguar, Jodhpur further south, Jaisalmer all the way to the west, Bikaner up further north, Udaipur more south, and the great capital Jaipur, and we finish with Dungarpur in the very, very far south near Gujarat. Finally, Muslim influence, that is Mughal influence, comes into full play now in mural painting in Rajasthan, the land of the Rajas, the kings. Descendants of the Mongol hordes, the Mughal conquest of most of northern India began with Babar, who dealt a major blow to the Rajputs in 1527. Under the brilliant Akbar the Great, Mughal culture and art finally penetrated tribal, warlike Rajasthan, partly by force, partly by marriage partnerships. It was a catalyst for new art, for sure. Although nothing much remains of Mughal mural art, the Hindu Rajas in Rajasthan expanded their forts and lodges and built new ones, with many wall spaces for mural art, which still survives. Mughal pastels, line, decoration, and more naturalism came into Indian art. Greater empirical observation than before, and a very new perspective. Painted on stone and brick walls, and on wooden panels too, they were. Later, under the British Raj, political stability encouraged trade, so a rich trading class began building huge havelis, mansions really, or villas. Portraiture came into its own now. And their art imitated the life of royalty with very secular painting. More courtly art than before. Secularity, shall we say, was in. So new romantic forms developed, not just of Radha and Krishna. Strong roundedness in line, already at Ajanta but lost afterwards, has now returned. Prosperous Jains also supported much religious art on their temple walls, like this, dry plaster frescoes. Many different modes illustrating new lifestyles. This is a Jain procession. Bundi Fort. In the fort there is the Badal Mahal. It means palace in the clouds, a kind of royal pleasure penthouse of sorts. One large room has paintings everywhere, even on the ceiling, all on pure lime plaster. It has the very earliest murals of all of Rajasthan, dating from the mid-1600s. Here we have an elephant procession, but no fighting. Still, there's an illusion of horizontal space and depth. Ladies watch the parade from behind cane curtains, just above the two large elephants in the center. This is early Rajasthani art with some Mughal influence, like these three men in Mughal attire. Most of the people are drawn in the same style as the Mughal art of the Jahangir and Shah Jahan eras, well framed by lines and borders. Krishna and his royal wife Rukmini are carried in a flying carriage, driven by Ganesh, accompanied outside by angels. Angels had come into Indian art from Europe by way of the Mughal Empire, a quite magical space here. And a joyous Rasalila, Krishna and the gopis in a circle dance. He has multiplied himself to dance with each one throughout the supernatural red background. A large lotus is in the center with hidden faces. Secondly, the murals in the Pool Mahal date much later, to the mid-1800s. It's a private sitting room with attached bedroom. A Maharaja or great king here with courtiers seated in his marble pavilion, tiled like a chessboard, seen from above, but the people are shown from the side. Rather typical perspective. His garden surrounded, with dancers and musicians, a kind of landscape in pastel colors, Mughal influence. Everyone else is playing Holi with colored water and powders. The bedroom has a secret passage to the zenana, the women's quarters. The Chhatra Mahal paintings date to the same mid-1800s. Here we have a royal hunt on horseback. Two boars have been speared in the lower center, but in the upper right a very peaceful forest is full of animals. Here we have landscape with a nice depth perspective. There's a pleasure boat on the lake which is full of fish, while the Maharaja sits in his palace overseeing everything, upper left. A very masterly juxtaposition of different themes. There are many paintings of Krishna and Radha with gopis in Vrindavana. On a swing up above, cows and gopas, or cowboys, below, a river with lotuses, fish and ducks. Krishna and his brother Bala. Nice delicacy of drawing and color, painted also on pure lime plaster. Very Mughal influenced naturalism of animals and some aspects of landscape. Trees are quite a fantasy. Lots of gopis, of course. Radha and Krishna dancing. These are all in the Maharau's sitting room. Maharau is a variation of Maharaja, great king. The largest collection of murals in the Bundi fort are in the Chitra Shala, or art gallery. Every inch of space is painted, dating from 1847. A Nayika, or heroine, is watching her hero lover approach on horseback during a storm. So similar to many, many miniatures. Abhisarika Nayika is she who confidently goes out to seek her hero, her lover, through the approaching night. The brave and ready heroine. There are many such Nayikas in this art gallery and in Rajasthani art in general. Here, being under a tree is a distinct ambience of Deccani influence. A feudal durbar, audience hall. Feudal chiefs have audience with the Raja, probably Ram Singh II, who patronized the work. A Mughal-inspired portrait. And an interesting bazaar scene just below the durbar. A sense of space is created by the repetitions of stalls and figures. Secular art it is, not even courtly, very Mughal in idea. A most unusual architectural plan of a very extensive temple, probably quite idealized. This is not seen anywhere else in Rajasthan. And there are many Krishna themes, of course. Here he is lifting up Mount Govardhana to protect the villagers from the storm brought on by the old Vedic god Indra, which is seen above on his white elephant. Krishna returning home with his friends the gopas, with the cows. Fantasy clouds and lightning above. Quite like a Mughal-inspired miniature painting, with landscape scene is very important, and animals fairly well drawn. And finally, Krishna playing his flute in Vrindavana. Many gopis. All executed with great lyrical and musical qualities and a very high sense of color and joyous movement. The murals of Bundi Fort. Now the Adinath Jain Temple. This is in the heart of Bundi. It has a few marvelous paintings too, dating to the 18 to 1900s. This is a procession of the great Mahavira himself, with elephants and many people moving along in escort, banners waving brightly. Notice how the closer hill provides a kind of backdrop for the carriage. Here is a cutaway view of a Jain temple. This has the sage Mahavira's dark blue statue as the object of worship, close to the center. He established Jainism as a religion. Devotees sit in various parts of the temple, compartmentalized. They are all drawn in profile except Mahavira himself, which means great hero. Most interesting are scenes of everyday life in Bundi. This is a street scene with buying and selling of vegetables. The faces are very delicately drawn with large doe-like eyes. There's a dog down below, and up above in the center a cat frisking about. Ladies in a city park with indigenous trees. This Jain art is unique to Rajasthan, fully Jain and Bundi in colors and expressiveness. The fabrics are especially exquisite too. The figures are elongated, idealized, drawing very lyrical. But in its portrayals of common life, the paintings are similar to Sravanabelagola in Karnataka. Bundi trees are especially well done, with finely detailed leaves. A dreamlike atmosphere here is quite pervasive. The Mughal ruler Jahangir created the state of Kotah out of Bundi. This was a political reward to Madhao Singh, who had helped Jahangir against the Golconda kingdom in the Deccan Plateau. Notice the lion in the lower right in the forest. It were the descendants of Madhao Singh who supported the mural paintings here, most of them done in the Kotah fort. The forest and hunting lodge of a Maharao here, mostly done in pastels. The very earliest wall art that still exists here dates from 1706, during the time of Bhim Singh. A detail of royal hunt after wild buffaloes. It represents a very definite Mughal influence, very dynamic. Most of the art in the fort dates to later, from 1826 on. A wealth of murals in several of its buildings commissioned by Maharao Ram Singh II. In the Raj Mahal, Krishna stories dominate. The villagers of Vrindavana are migrating. Mother Yashoda in the dairy with baby Krishna. A couple views, both down below and up above as well. Baby Krishna. Many gopis around. Supposedly they cannot wait for him to grow up. Somewhat naive, very folk art influence. Many scenes of Krishna's later childhood is quite romantic. Rural Vrindavana with many gopis, gopas, and cows. Kotah was full of forests when these murals were done. Much less so now. All the painted panels merge into each other without any marked borders, either vertical or horizontal. These landscape paintings are especially noted for their realism. Even the trees are rather fanciful pastels and browns. Colors of the different seasons vary. These are autumn scenes in the Raj Mahal. Again, the Mughal-inspired naturalism of animals and landscape, if not the trees. Here, in the very top left, Krishna is up in a tree with many saris, having stolen the clothes of the naked gopis while they were bathing. Naughty Krishna. The scene is divided into three parts by the different landscape elements. In the fort's Arjun Mahal, the images are all based on royal pastimes. The Maharao Shatrusal II is on a bird hunt, using his hunting falcon. His hunting lodge is surrounded by the river, full of delightful birds and fishes drawn with very delicate lines. Mughal architecture becomes Rajasthani. Nice aerial perspective here too. The Maharao with a halo, lower left, arrives by horse to his palace after the hunt. Over on the right, his trained hunting cat is on the cart. Interesting foliage. Strong borders are based on textile designs of the time. Quite fanciful trees. All the pastels are framed by very intricate borders, which are said to be some of the most beautiful of any in Rajasthan. Borders had come into Rajasthani art from both Jain and Mughal influence. The most remarkable scene is at Kotah Fort itself, on the occasion of the visit of a famous Swami, a royal guru. The best paintings are on stone with marble dust in the plaster. Marble dust. Even yogurt and resin were used in the mixture, and coconut powder was applied as a glaze. Drawings were done with charcoal. Over on the left, men with a cannon pointed upward. Others prepare fireworks that will twirl around. Preparations for an elephant parade, and finally for an elephant fight. Squirrel hair brushes were used for colors, it is said. A caged lion that may see some action. Very poorly drawn here. And lots of onlookers. The murals in the Arjun Mahal date from 1864 on and are full of excitement and exuberance of real events that happened, or at least that ideally happened. In the Chhatra Mahal, it's a small apartment of only a bedroom and a veranda, there are many scenes drawn to different scales, mostly without borders, done from 1875 on, during the time of a Maharao Shatrusral II. Most of the panels depict scenes of Krishna and his royal wife Rukmini arriving at his palace in Dwarka, but the architecture shown is that of the Kotah fort. Interesting aerial perspective here is shown by the way the wall is drawn in a sort of zigzag pattern. Bright colors of red and yellow ochres and careful detailing are quite hallmarks of these paintings. Terra verte, indigo, and both black and white clay were also used throughout Rajasthan. Krishna here on the left, more with dark skin, is blessing a ruler, likely Shatrusal himself. Various colors and designs on different planes create visual space in a way. Krishna and Rukmini celebrating Holi Festival on a Dwarka palace terrace, with lots of ladies shooting colored powders and waters at each other. Krishna seems to be enjoying himself. Kotah fort art is notable for its realism, in the way its architecture is drawn and in the way festivals were celebrated. Great energy and movement and zest. The use of reds, of course, adds a lot of excitement. Here is the mythic Madhav Singh, who had first been given Kotah by the Mughal emperor back in the 1600s, sitting in his garden inside his great palace, very courtly Mughal style. He's even surrounded by water. He had spent some time in the Deccan. It's rather amazing how space is created visually here. All sorts of activities are going on. Parades and elephant fights. The grandest of pseudo-historic scenes are here at the Chhatra Mahal. Two private villas have some great murals too. The Devataji Ki Haveli was built by a royal family of priests, Rama and Sita in the forest. One of 5 murals of note. Begun in 1826, this mansion has 3 small rooms of art created by Sridhar Lalaji, who was very close to Ram Singh II. It slowly became accepted that the name of the artist became known. Aerial perspective, with such stylized mountains behind. Interesting sense of depth and space. I repeat again, it slowly now became accepted that the name of the artist became known. Here's a portrait of Ram Singh himself on a royal elephant in grand procession. Many of his courtiers and throngs of the public join in. A heroine, a Nayaka, dressed as a warrior, with sword and shield, bow and gun, quite exceptional. These paintings often show very interesting movement, even exhilaration. Art in the villas is typical of Ram Singh's time and displays great delicacy of drawing and color. The very lyrical quality and foliage clearly show influence from Deccani artists, but it's very Mughal in its decorative borders and detailing. Here's another villa, the Jahala Ki Haveli. It was built by a government minister sometime after 1827, and we have just 2 good murals here. A heroine, a Nayaka, holding a small child, painted on a brick powder plaster mixed with lime. Even some red cinnabar and gold powder and foil was used here and there in colors. The most unusual of all, there are 2 women on a very Mughal terrace, embracing each other, incredibly intertwined, even sexually caressing each other. Obviously the minister enjoyed such scenes as this. Now the Marwar area in the fort of Naguar. A couple of paintings stand out, but of 2 different styles. Middle 1700s. Women picnicking by a stream shows very much folk influence from the Deccan. Costumes, elongated bodies, pale palette, sensuous ambience. All because a Marwar Raja had visited the Deccan a century earlier. and of course took a few painters with him. Both paintings are in the fort's Badal Mahal, bedrooms of the rulers, so there are only lovely women. This is a musician, a Rani, wife of a Raja, her portrait done in a more classical Mughal style with floral arabesques all around her. It's in a different bedroom. And now the grand Jodhpur fort. It also lies in the barren Marwar region of Rajasthan. As its Rajas began to thrive, they supported murals in temples and in the massive fort, which has buildings with lime-plastered walls made especially for murals, all much influenced by Mughal art. Maharaja Man Singh is on the left, is honoring his guru, Ayesnath, attended by two servants. It's one of the earliest paintings here, 1808, in the Maha Mandir temple. The Tija Mata Mandir was built by Singh's wife for her guru. As a devotee of Rama, she had this remarkable coronation of Rama and Sita painted on a wall in 1857. Within the huge fort, the Pool Mahal of Raja Takht Singh has several exceptional paintings illustrating different musical ragas, dating to the middle 1800s. The best are near the ceiling in the line of small oval panels all around. Ragini Vibhas is a raga of the dawn, so she brings fresh garlands to her lover just before he leaves for the day. Such varying styles here. Ragini Dhyanshri is a wife who's been left alone, and she pines away with a friend to try to console her. A sad late afternoon raga. Really nice bright colors, Jain influence. They are called ragamalas, paintings that illustrate musical modes. Very romantic. In the Takht Vilas, Singh's bedroom, a woman is taming wild deer by playing the veena. She represents Todi Ragini, a blissful raga played in the late morning. Two dancers. Here in the Takht Vilas, dark maroon, olive green, and yellow predominate, mostly unmixed. Such strong vitality is quite common in Rajasthani art. A unique Nayika, a strong heroine, has just finished her bath and wringing out her hair, waited on by a servant, of course. It's painted on the door of a small cupboard. Nayaks and Nayikas, heroes and heroines. This big Jaisalmer fort dates from around 1200. Maharaja Gaj Singh supported the wall paintings done here in the Rang Mahal. Only two are really worth mentioning. Idealized Jaisalmer and its fort on the day of the goddess Gangmar's procession. That means Parvati. Very Europeanized depth of space. The deity would pass through all the areas riding high on an elephant in the lower center here, with nobility and commoners watching everywhere. The mountains are derived from Persian art. Krishna grazing his fantasy cows in a fantasy landscape. Many panels of Vishnu and Shiva stories with floral borders. Color schemes are quite typical of the middle 1800s. Next, the old Mewar region, Junagadh Fort. It is in the old state of Bikaner, and it was built by Maharaja Rai Singh in the later 1500s. 4 good murals here. Frankly, many of the very special rooms of these forts and palaces are highly decorated with inlaid mosaics, mirrors, and paint like this. Quite impressive, but that's not where the mural art usually is. In a room called the Sujan Mahal, 3 women play music. They are on a wooden door leading out from the Gaj Mandir, or temple. Not on plaster, but on wood. Mughal influence can be seen in the wine flasks painted in the side alcoves, originally Persian. This first art was supported by Rajas in the early 1700s. The earliest paintings on walls are in the Chandra Mahal, a room and a covered veranda, done in the middle 1700s. Quite strong influence from Persia, via the Deccan in this case, not Mughal. Bikaner Maharajas out hunting across the Bikaner hills and plains. Quite interesting how space is created by the high horizons and distant-looking trees. Very Persian that has become thoroughly now Bikaner. Huge cattle. Luminous dark pastel shades of oranges to browns here at the Junagadh fort. Also in the Mewar region, the Udaipur fort was built from the 1400s on. Mewar was the largest and strongest state here and held out the longest against the Muslims, the Mughals. Up high inside the fort, there are many decorated courtyards like this one with modern painting, and several small rooms with the very oldest art nearby. In the little Krishna Bhavan, excellent wall murals were done in the late 17 or 1800s under the Maharana Bhim Singh, who ruled for 50 years. Wooden railings all around keep us tourists a bit away. Look at the two upper right-hand panels. So here's a closer view of the top one. Bhim Singh, in the upper left, is watching a staged animal fight, staged as a spectacle. The volume of the palace wall creates an interesting spatial backdrop. In the next panel down, he watches a dance performance, very Mughal in ornamentation. Many of the paintings here are portraits of the Raja as chief participant in the activities, often with a halo. Here in a puja worship of a four-headed Shiva as a lingam, called Eklingi. He and a yogi worshipping at a Shivalinga. Here is some of the best art in Rajasthan. Their lyrical quality, expression, and movement are among the finest. Elephants fighting. Strong, bright colors, especially red and yellow and blue, are very characteristic of Mewar art. That's in the miniatures too. A hero, or Nayak, hunting a tiger. And a Nayaka up above, excited to see her Nayak arrive. The lines are more angular than in the other art centers here, but the expressiveness is unsurpassed according to scholars. A Nayaka suddenly sees herself and her Nayak in the mirror, who appears behind her in the foliage, seen as Radha and Krishna in this case. Another Nayak killing a tiger, which was lured to a tied-up gazelle as bait. Heroism is often part of Rajasthani art. Much of Mewar painting was done in epic style, with stories continuing from one wall to another. Quite stylized here in Udaipur's Krishna Bhavan. And Jaipur, the capital, founded as a city around this fort in 1727 by Jai Singh II in the early state of Amber. Amber had been the first area to come under Mughal sway through a marriage arrangement with Akbar. It is in the city Palace of the Winds where the murals were commissioned by Madhav Singh, middle 1700s. Palace of the Winds. An idealized walled Jaipur city and its fort just above it. More natural trees give a nice sense of distance in this aerial view. In the lower left, there are women at the well. And at the lower right, city men asking advice of a hermit in front of his hut. A royal terrace garden of the women's quarters, similar view. Many women are standing or walking around picking flowers, some with their legs in the pool. European type receding hills, more natural than early Rajasthani hills. In the palace's painted room, all surfaces are covered. Srinataji at the right, a form of Krishna for devotees. Notice the lower center panel. In it, elephants fight in various spaces. Jaipur became a hub of literary and artistic endeavor under the Mughals. Jaipur art shows influence of Jain, Mughal, and Deccani schools of painting, quite a mixture, and Jaipur artists were employed in many areas, even outside of Rajasthan, very influential in the art world. Fairly realistic colors for most all of these paintings, subtle, elegant, mostly pastels for Jaipur art. Very pleasing, very much Mughal influenced. And a haveli, Pundarikaji Ki Haveli, a grand villa in Jaipur. Patronized by Jagat Singh, his 17 painters created this art on the walls. This is the procession of the goddess Gangur Mata, her images being carried by royal priests, form of Parvati. A noble lord is arriving on a peacock chariot for the procession. A remarkable space and perspective created with the architectural background outside of the city walls. A Maharaja will lead the grand procession from on top of an elephant with a banner. But much of Jaipur's art was secular, even hedonistic, more so than any other art of the Rajasthani states. Interspersed among the large murals are very many small ones like this, a celebration of the Holi Festival, using lots of colors to spray and shoot each other with. It's from murals of the 12 months of the year called the Baramasa. The Baramasa. Jagat Singh's hedonistic lifestyle is shown in many paintings. His royal pleasure garden pavilion, very Deccan influential. He caresses his current favorite in the pavilion with his many other women around in various states of tipsiness. The wine apparently flowed very well. Finally, here in Rajasthan, the Dungarpur fort. This lies in the deep south of Rajasthan, not far from the Gujarat border, and some of the more exquisite murals in the state were painted there in the late 1800s under Uday Singh. Rukmini prays in her father's Shivalingam shrine. A lovely, graceful Nayika. Trees became more natural than before. These murals are some of the latest ones painted, very much Deccan influence. Baby Krishna here miraculously floating on a leaf while sucking on his toe. Very interesting borders. A grand scene at an official durbar. The style here is similar to that in some of the classy villas. All surfaces are painted in a reception hall for distinguished visitors, a kind of grandeur. This durbar is an audience with the Maharao Uday Singh himself. Very formal, done with great lyrical skill. These are quite late murals, very decorative, but done with good taste and much delicacy of expression. These Dungarpur paintings are very well preserved. A kind of circle dance here, women around a royal drummer. Rajasthani art often shows a unique vigor and joie de vivre, often lacking in other Indian art. Very celebratory. And Krishna, who multiplied himself as a dancer between each two of the gopis, the most famous circle dance of all, called the Rasalila. The ancient gods watch from above in their chariots high in the sky.